Hey everybody, welcome back to Oz Bodybuilding Podcast. And today I'm joined by Renee Archer, IFBB athlete figure, and I'm pretty sure three-time overall winner.
Yes.
Yeah. How's that feel?
Good. Yeah, state overall. So
Yeah,
yeah.
state overall. Haven't won the pro card yet, but hopefully it's coming.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed it'll happen one day.
So my first question kind of is just tell me about where you found your love for bodybuilding or how you kind of got introduced into it.
It was actually presented to me after an 8-week challenge.
Okay.
Um, I was overweight,
Hmm.
suffering quite badly with arthritis in my knees.
Yep.
And I was probably sitting at closer to 90 kilos. And I couldn't walk properly. I had braces on my knees because of my arthritis is behind my kneecaps. And so any kind of like activity was just absolute pain. So I actually went to the gym, and that's when I started going. I went to the gym for the very first
Yeah.
time. And I lost a little bit of weight, and then we moved from New South Wales to Queensland.
Yep.
And I was in Sippy Downs, Sunshine Coast at the time, and I went straight to the gym because that's what I was used to for the
Mhm.
last 12 months or so. And I met my first coach there, and he was doing an 8-week challenge, and he asked me whether I'd like to enter it, and I said, "Yeah, no worries, I'll do that." And then after the 8-week challenge, I think I came second
Yep.
from the gym, and then he'd never prepped a person for a bodybuilding show before,
Okay.
and he said to me, he goes, "Well, what do you think? Would you like to do one?" And I was just like, "What, me? No way! Like this,
Yeah.
there's no way I could be a bodybuilder," because the stigma of bodybuilders was, you know, drugs
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff, So I remember going home and telling my husband, and I said, "Oh, um, I'd like to do a bodybuilding show." And he's like, "No way, no, you're going to have to take drugs and all this kind of stuff and steroids." I'm like, "No." Um, there's federations out there that
Yeah.
are for athletes. So that's how I was introduced to it all. I had no idea up until that. Like I had seen the Olympia on
Yeah.
TV, and I knew who Nicole Wilkins was because
Mhm.
she was absolutely gorgeous, and she was very, very big back in the early 2000s. So um, it was I kind of knew of her, and I knew of of the guys,
Yeah.
but never thought for 1 second that I would ever be a bodybuilder myself.
That's really cool. That's such an interesting kind of introduction, you can say, into it,
Yeah,
into the sport,
definitely.
coming off an 8-week challenge and then kind of being, hey, do you want to do a prep? Can I prep you? And, what do you know was if there was a particular reason why he chose you? Was it because he liked your work ethic? Because you're saying he hadn't coached anyone to stage before. So,
Yeah, I mean he was a young PT guy,
yeah.
and I think he was just interested in himself to see if he could prep someone for a
Mhm.
show. I'm pretty sure that he got introduced to it himself only a few years prior, but I don't think he'd ever competed. And I just thought, well, why not? It's just like another challenge,
Yeah.
right? And then we prepped, I think we prepped for 16 weeks. And we died it down. And I remember it was for INBA
Yeah.
and in early 2015.
A while
uh,
ago.
and I went into because I thought it was really exciting because it was a mum category
Yeah.
because like I'm a mum, right? So and I was like, oh, this is really cool. There's like mum category. I was always one of those body conscious people
Yeah.
where I wore like big long t-shirts over swimmers and stuff like
Mhm.
that because I used to be so overweight. So I was always very body conscious. And I remember being backstage in this scantily little tiny bikini, and I was freaking out. I was just like, oh my God, I've got to get on stage looking like this. People are going to stare at me and they're going to not like me, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I went on stage, I finally got the guts to get out there. That was it. My
Yeah.
love for bodybuilding just started from there. And I actually won my very first show.
Oh,
So
that's exciting.
yeah, it was exciting. I remember going into, it was in the fitness category
Yeah.
and the sports category. So I won fitness mamas, sports mamas, and I think I did my age category. I think
Yeah.
it was 30 plus. And I won all four of those. So that's
That's
how it all.
awesome. Do you think that that kind of gave you that confidence and boost to kind of uh which added to you instantly falling in love because you kind of overcame, I guess, maybe simultaneously overcame that fear of, that body consciousness that you kind of had in the past?
100%. I agree. It was almost like my alter ego.
Yeah.
So I always had confidence inside
Yeah.
myself, but could actually show it. And and it was the same in my relationship. I didn't have confidence with my body at all.
Yeah.
Uh, Going into my first show like that and realizing, wow, people actually liking what they see, it
Mm.
gave me confidence in myself to just progress from there and be more confident with who I am.
No, that's really beautiful. That's really good to hear. So then when did you kind of transition into the IFBB and kind of going down the route of figure?
That wasn't until 2019, which was my first show, and that was the last Arnold's that Australia had.
Yeah.
Well, good Arnold's.
Mhm.
um, so I always wanted to go into figure. Like my first year of competing with the INBA, I did season A, and there was like a mid season back then as
Mhm.
well, and then there was an end season, and I went double pro at the end. I remember going to the Brisbane Expo,
Yeah.
a show there, and it was like a nationals, I suppose, for INBA, and I went pro fitness and pro sports.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then the following year, I competed in my pro shows and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and I actually didn't like fitness anymore. I I used to always admire the figure girls, even in ICN and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Oh wow, they got more muscle, and they look really cool, and it looks like way more fun than what I'm doing prancing. Felt like I was prancing around.
Yeah.
Um, like a bit of showboating, and I didn't feel it. I just thought, oh, no, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And so I thought, well, okay, well, there's a competition heading over to Bali. And I said to my coach, I said, I want to do that competition. I want to enter the fitness pro show, but I also want to do
Figure.
figure.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. And I had to, and then that was 2 days before the show. And he had to quickly teach me how to do, how
Do
to
the
pose.
posing.
And I remember putting on the figure suit and looking at myself in the mirror, and I felt more comfortable in that figure suit than what I ever did in a fitness bikini. So it was almost like a realization of, yeah,
Hmm.
this is where I'm supposed to be.
That's really cool. So yeah, it's good. You're like you're saying that kind of realization of this is type the look that I like more in comparison. Like some people may bodybuild, but then they put on board shorts or classic, and then or they prefer the classic posing and they feel more at home in that division. Because bikini has really like exploded in the numbers of athletes, and I myself actually do, like you're saying, I really do like figure. I like that there's a particular structure, like you still are keeping that really classy look while also showing off the muscles of the wide back, round shoulders.
Yeah,
So is that kind of what veered you towards that in comparison to like the fitness, like why figure, like why, how come? Because
I
I know
think
wellness wasn't around then.
I think looking at my body type, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
tall, so I'm 171 centimeters. So I'm tall in the taller division for a figure girl. I had always had a very small waist,
Yeah.
um, and even in fitness, I could always engage my lats quite large. So I always had a very small upper body frame,
Hmm.
but my legs from previous sports, from growing up doing netball and tennis and all those kinds of sports and running, I had really really good legs. So my proportionate wise for fitness, my legs were getting too big.
Yeah.
Um, and so looking at the figure division, I kind of slotted a little bit more closer to that.
Yeah.
But I also preferred it too because I felt that it was more balanced,
Mm.
and it looks more pleasing to me.
Yeah. So fast forward a couple of years, and you've well, more than a couple, but you've placed 3 times at the states, winning
Yeah.
the overalls.
Hmm.
What has been kind of the overall reasoning, like judges' feedback on how come you've missed the pro card?
It has to be my posterior chain.
Okay.
Uh, Unfortunately, uh, I genetically I have a very lean back.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have very thick muscle structures in my stabilizers.
Mhm.
Um, my rhomboids are actually really quite short, so I do have a very different kind of shaped back. Although it is very wide, it's probably one of the
Yeah,
widest stage.
it is.
And but and also my glutes, because when I came into bodybuilding, I had a very flat backside.
Yeah.
I had no glute development really at all, um, and I think that was because of I had a lot of weight on, and I lost a lot of weight, so I
Yeah.
had a lot and all that kind of stuff as well. So it took a long time to build the glutes that I do have, because I
Mhm.
did struggle with training to engage in my glutes, and I never really actually um, had someone that actually taught me properly how to engage my glutes until pretty much the last sort of like 2 to 3 years. Well, I said actually no, probably the last 2 years.
Mhm.
I probably really focused on that glute development. But when it comes to pro card, um, it's almost like tick, 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 tick. No. So
Yeah. Because
it's
I've
like,
always felt that you'd been super close because you really do like have that structure and shape. And it's always just been that to me, like a couple of points for whatever reason that, obviously one person has just had that extra tick.
I feel like it's always been the rear.
Yeah.
Um, they say, they say in the industry, it shows a one from the back, but um, quite I don't believe that that's true for women. I
Yeah.
think maybe for men, but for women, I think that they need to be feminine and aesthetically pleasing from
Yeah.
the front. I don't believe that a figure girl that looks very masculine from the front would do quite well in, say, a pro division overseas, because I know in overseas they do take that femininity and that presentation to a higher standard, where they don't want to have figure girls that look masculine.
Yeah.
So from the front, if you look at any of my photos from anybody from the front, I'm pretty much the winner.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm beautiful or anything like that, but
Yeah.
my shape from the
No,
front.
I agree. I agree. You definitely have a really beautiful, like, that taper, like you said, your waist is already small. You definitely have like one of the largest slats, and like that is shown on stage and
Mhm.
very proportionate with that. So this is a question on that, I guess. I've always been curious. So are you kind of wanting to, is the look focused on like a cross? Because I've noticed like I've always been confused by how big the legs are meant to be. Like, are you still meant to kind of have that very, you still need good leg development, but is it still a narrow type of look from the hips down?
No, I think it again. It just depends on the person. Like you look at a shorter figure
Yeah.
girl, and they have quite a large quad sweep, but it has to be in proportion. So if you've got a shorter figure girl with a large quad sweep, they have to match that up with the upper body.
Mm.
Um, so yes, it is a cross, but you have to match from top to bottom, back to front, side to side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
everything has to be in proportionate.
because that's what I noticed about um she just competed in season 8. I only know her Instagram handle, which is Coach Kirk, from
Yeah.
Melbourne. Yeah. For being very short, and she's got a lot of thick muscle, but she does give off that really, like you're saying, symmetrical from bottom to top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do believe, not that I'm a short person, but I do believe it's um, a little bit harder for the shorter girls to keep proportion,
Yeah,
because shorter women do tend to pack on muscle a lot, I think a lot quicker.
yeah,
So it's quite easy for them to spill over and look bigger. And they don't really kind of want to get into that physique range.
yeah,
So they might have to sort of pull back a lot on their training to be able to grow because they got shorter quads. Where my quads, you line me up with any girl, and I'm probably about 2 inches longer than anybody else, you know. So I'm going to have those
Yeah.
long, and which a lot of my feedback comes back that I have very long lines and very neat lines.
Yeah.
And I've always been very conditioned. Although my feedback from season A said that I wasn't conditioned enough.
Oh, okay.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
That was the most conditioned I think I've ever been.
Yeah, that's an interesting when you feel like you bought a certain package
Mm-hmm.
and the feedback that you've been given previously has not been on something like that, and then just to kind of get that given to you, yeah, it must kind of really shake you up a bit, or confuse you and your coach on kind of why that is the case.
It's quite confusing because after you've won your state overall up against the biggest lineup in
Mm,
Australia, because Queensland has always, in my eyes, and I think in a lot of others, has always been the hardest state show.
I agree.
So I knew I was up there with top two,
Yeah.
and I knew that Lisa was a front runner. So I came into the nationals thinking I had a chance, not convincingly telling myself that I was going to win it, but
Yeah,
you're there to win, so you
exactly.
do. So I knew I was definitely out there. But to come back with feedback saying I wasn't conditioned enough, that was pretty disappointing. Because in my state show, that feedback wasn't like that.
Yeah, it
So
wasn't there.
no, so it was very confusing for me. But after showing my coach the feedback and the photos and whatnot, you know, it's a subjective game.
Mm,
You gotta take the losses with the wins,
yeah,
and you can't sort of stay in that negative zone. So you just move on and push on.
exactly. That's a good mindset to have.
Try to get better next time.
Yeah, hit the mark eventually.
Oh, eventually. I hope they think that I'm not too old.
Never too old. So with this off season and focusing on, like you're saying, the posterior, what has kind of been your go-to exercises that you've noticed has really helped, and you've believed that kind of, do you think you've made that progress needed in comparison to, your last showing?
Yeah, I think my training has been a lot of hamstring and glute focus this time around, but more a different kind of training as what I used to be with my old coach.
Yeah.
So I'm actually not squatting as much as what I used to, and I'm not deadlifting as much as what I used to either. I'm actually really doing isolated movements.
Hmm.
So like your stiff deads, a lot of stiff deads,
Yeah.
and just with dumbbells and with the Smith machine, and a lot of hip thrusts as well, a lot of lunges, static lunges. So all of those movements are pretty much the basis of my glute training.
Yeah.
And then obviously I have a legs, which is like more like heavy leg pressing
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So a lot of the bigger compound movements, believe it or not, have actually been taken out. And I think that's got a lot to do with glute engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really need to focus on really focusing on that glute mind muscle,
Hmm.
uh, to be able to grow that muscle. It's a big muscle. So
Yeah, no, definitely. Because that's something that I've always found interesting. I've always had, troubles with doing conventional deadlifts and engaging my glutes myself. Like I always used to think that back in the day that like it was a back exercise, but done correctly, it's hamstring and glutes. And that's when, like you're saying, I kind of then had to, realize my engagement with my glute activation is really poor. So I had to focus on more, isolating and hip hinge movements to really, increase that engagement and actually start to feel it, to then be
definitely.
able to transfer it back to, things like conventional deadlifts.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my last coach, I was pretty much trained quite heavily like a power lifter.
Yeah.
And now my coach now that I've had for a year and a half, I'm trained like a bodybuilder. So and focusing on my weaker points.
Yeah.
And that's made a huge difference in my physique. I mean, if you look at my, season 2019 to my 2022,
It's like day and night.
yeah, absolutely day and night.
So that's really interesting. What was there a particular reason that your old coach had you training powerlifting style? Was it from the point of view of
I think that was just his style, and
yeah,
it's worked for many years for a lot of people. I mean, it worked for me, So,
yeah,
but after five, almost 5.5 years with that coach, I was tired.
mm,
I trained 6 days a week, with one rest day, and it was 2.5 3 hour sessions. They were
that's
big,
crazy.
yeah, and they were always like quite heavy blocks, all the time.
Yeah,
Injury injury definitely played a part in that as well, and my body never really truly recovered properly.
yeah,
And I got a back injury and a shoulder injury, and then wrist injuries and ankle injury, and all this kind of stuff started happening. So when I finished with all the COVID and everything, I changed coaches, and I remember showing my coach now my program that I was used to
yeah,
doing, and he's like, "No, that's just too much for your body. You've got to rest." So I
yeah,
now need 5 days a week, and I probably weight train at the most probably an hour and a half.
yeah. So you're
Yeah.
really reducing all that extra fatigue and getting that recovery. So you're training that hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
keeping the intensity still there,
Oh,
but
definitely.
yeah, you're allowing that body to recover and then grow. And you, like you say, you probably notice the major difference anyway. And it's like it's that latest thing of like less is more.
Yeah, like I still train, with intent. Every day I train with intent, and I try to train as hard as I possibly can, and a lot of the times to fatigue, and so that hasn't changed. But what has changed is that my body, I feel, isn't under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping better, and I think that was a major big development for me. Like I was getting maybe 4 to 4.5 hours sleep previously, and
Wow.
8. So my body's recovering a lot better, and just my mental health too. I think
Mm,
it changed significantly as well. I feel a lot better. When I go into the gym, where previously it was sort of started to become quite a chore
yeah.
and something I didn't enjoy much anymore. And now I'm back to sort of like getting into the gym and just loving
Being
training.
excited.
Yeah, because I know because I've seen the development
Yeah.
on the year and a half I've been with Shelby, so that just excites me even more.
But
So
what can come?
what else can we do for another year and a half?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's a bit of fun.
No, that's awesome. So what are your intentions with competing and hopping back on stage? You have a show lined up?
Yeah, I will announce it today. I haven't put it on social media. I
Yeah.
kind of under wraps, but the day of nationals, I was speaking to my husband, and I was eating hot chips after the show, as you do. And I'd sent that email over to my coach because he's over in the
Yeah.
States. And I think he was sleeping at the time, and I sent an email through and sent some photos through or whatever. And he wrote back to me, and he's just like, "Oh, that's okay, roll with the punches, it's all right, we'll just go on to the next one." And I wrote back to him and I said, "Well, what's the next one?" And in no uncertain terms, he said, "F Australia, you're coming overseas." And I was like, "What?" And he just, big capital letters, he just said, "Let's do Vegas." So
Wow.
yeah, so I'm off to the amateur
Oh, that
Olympia.
is so exciting.
I leave in 3.5 weeks.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you for sharing that exclusively on here.
Yes,
Um,
exclusive first time.
no, that's really, really exciting. That, and I think that's a great opportunity to really compare yourself, at the highest level, because everyone's going to be at the Olympia, and at least you can compete, and then you can watch the Olympia, see all the figure girls up on stage, and have that type of experience. That's something that I feel like all athletes should, if given an opportunity, at least do. And
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm definitely dipping my toe into the flame. I can tell you right now, like um, this is going to be a very, very big show.
yeah,
With after there's no COVID now, and it's back in Vegas, and previous one obviously was quite small,
yeah.
but now it's all back to normal again. So it's going to be absolutely massive, and I'm ready for the challenge. I honestly just want to know exactly where I fit
Yeah.
in the figure industry, and in the figure category, should I say, and up against some of the best girls. Like a lot of these girls have won national shows, NPC shows over
Mm.
there. They actually give them an entry for the amateur O. So there's a lot of girls that have won, and they have to
Yeah.
have criteria too. They have to be top three to be able to enter as well. So
Okay, I didn't know there was things like that. Okay, that's interesting.
top three and top five. So depending on which state they're from, I think, but they have to be up in that top level, because as you can imagine, some of those NPC shows they've got
Yeah.
30 women, 30, 35 women. So there's a lot, and I think they're expecting a little over 100 figure girls in the.
Wow.
Mm,
That's crazy. But that, like you're saying, it's that great opportunity. As much as we live in Australia, and we are still so limited, especially figure and even women's physique. Like the number of athletes we have in Australia is only so limited. So taking that opportunity, whether if it wasn't the amateur Olympian and it was a different overseas show, you're exposing yourself to such a bigger pool of people where like you can really get a good estimation of where you kind of sit, like you're saying, in the figure industry. And you can then reassess, all right, okay, so I am meeting, like here in Australia I'm at this, but over here, okay, I'm only actually meeting this and this. Now I need to really work harder on this and this. So it's good.
yeah, well, in Australia, I'm pretty much competing against the same
Yeah.
people all the time. So uh, for IFBB here in Australia, like I always enter my masters because I'm obviously over 40. I
Yeah.
turned 40 weeks, and I've won every single masters division ever thrown. So I've got 6 of those under my belt. It's funny because the masters girls, they're just so respectful and beautiful, and they're lovely ladies. And every season they'll message me and they go, "Are you competing this season?" And they're happy if I'm not, because then
Yeah.
it gives them a window to opportunity to win one. But we joke about it all the time. We think it's hilarious. But you are competing against a lot of the same women all
Mm.
the time, and sometimes there are new figure girls coming through the ranks, and it's good to see that there was some really good new girls coming in this year,
Yeah.
and hopefully it'll continue to get better. I think some of the states are really lacking with numbers with figure girls. In Queensland, it just happens to be the biggest. So I guess I've put myself in a pretty good opportunity here and
Yeah. Because
to be some of the best.
yeah, it's interesting because I always used to think that Melbourne was kind of like bodybuilding central, but the past couple of years, even a bit longer, like Queensland has really kind of taken over with the amount of, athletes we have, but like really high caliber.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been good to see.
I think also not just with IFBB. I remember with ICN and even IMBA, Queensland were always considered the most conditioned in the field.
Yeah.
So whether it's the weather, I don't know, but Queensland girls and Queensland boys, they really do. They bring
Yeah.
condition every single time.
Nah, it's good. It's good. It's keeping. Nah, it's good. I like, I live in Queensland, so glad to be representing.
Awesome.
So something else that I want to kind of touch on away from the competing side and all that is I see that you have a opposing coach, like you're opposing coach.
I am. I only just started for season B.
Yeah.
Uh, I used to, with my previous coach, I would always help. Well, pretty much did a lot of his posing with his girls.
Mhm.
Being a fitness pro and sports pro for INBA and ICN, I was quite good at. I've always been quite good at
Yeah.
posing, um, because I've always been taught by some of the best as well, even from the very very beginning. So I would just wanted to sort of share my knowledge of posing when I was with him, and so I was just help and would do posing every single Saturday and that kind of stuff. And then when um, I went on my own and got Shelby, which is an online coach,
Yeah.
I thought, well, I really miss teaching people how to
Mm.
pose. So I thought, well, I'll just see how I go. I don't think I'd get very many people. And then it just kind of like blew up a
Blew up.
little.
Yeah.
And I'm just focusing on figure because I kind of feel that figure really needs to be honed in. I find that a lot of the figure competitors, especially for the mandatory, like the symmetry rounds,
Mhm.
they're getting a little out of hand with their posing. So you're looking at sort of like more of the natural federations, and you know, in their symmetry posing, their arms are out everywhere. They got no delt caps showing. They're
Yeah.
all over the place. So I thought, well, what better way to help the industry, especially the figure industry, is
Mm.
to actually just do figure posing. So um, I did started up season B, and I actually got 5 people pro cards. So, I mean, thankfully to their coaches as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
The feedback that came back from all of those women was their posing was just beautiful. So,
That's
uh,
amazing.
to me, that makes me proud,
Yeah.
and it definitely tell my girls from the rest, because I did show them a little bit differently, and I had to break down a few of the bad habits that they'd been
Mhm.
posing previously. And yeah, and I talked to other posing coaches as well, and they're under the same mind as well. Figure really needs to be back to what it used to be.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. It's really exciting to hear. Like, I think any opportunity where anyone can take time to, really kind of give back to the sport or give back to a division that you care about. And I think something like posing, I know posing coaching has kind of, really taken off in the past couple of years, but it's good to see because it is something that you can really tell who knows how to pose and who doesn't. And also,
I myself have a posing coach.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So I teach posing, but I also have a posing coach. So I think that it's incredibly important to have that in your bag.
yeah,
Where I've seen, and I've judged shows before. I've seen potentially women up there look absolutely incredible, but their posing has let them down.
mm,
Then they could have showcased their body so much nicer and so much better. And I just saw it actually at nationals. There was this young girl in the figure division, and her anxiety took over. She wasn't confident, and her body was incredible, but she didn't have that confidence on stage, and her posing was
yeah,
lacking. And her partner, which was also her coach, was in front of me sitting there. And I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, I'd like to help her.
that's
And then
awesome.
he goes, are you a posing coach? I said, yes, I am. I said, just get in touch.
No, that's
um,
fantastic.
yeah, because you could see where that's what she was lacking. She's lacking that confidence and that posing. Otherwise, she would have definitely increased in that lineup.
Yeah, because it can really make that difference, especially when it's close. When it's really close, I was talking to someone else about this, and it's just like everything matters. And I think, from your tan to how well you hold the pose. So, being able to showcase that physique. And like you're saying, I think that's something even I've noticed, even with the men, like you see people with really good shape or really good structure or a certain, body part that really pops, but they just can't pose it right. And it just was like, where is it? Or, they're hitting a great shot, but then they can't turn their legs on, or they're just missing their whatever it may be. So no, it's really good that you've kind of found that niche group, and it's great to see you giving back to that figure community.
And with posing too, you have to be conditioned for posing as well. It's not just getting up there and going through your rounds, some of these judges will hold you there
Yeah.
for, a good 60 seconds, a minute and a half. And you have to keep it switched on the whole entire time. And there are certain cues and certain things that you can do, especially with the men as well, that you can be taught to be able to make sure that you're not switching off, because you don't realize that you switch off your legs. You are tired, you are fatigued, your adrenaline's pumping, and you don't know that your legs aren't on. You've got a coach screaming at you going,
turn them on, turn them on.
It's happened to me plenty of times. I've seen it on stage a trillion times as well. So to have a posing coach, I think, is really important, because it actually conditions you for stage. Feel that your coach obviously conditions you with your body for stage, where a posing coach will condition you for posing. Because, like I said, sometimes they will hold you in a back pose for quite a long time. And how many times have I seen bent up scapulars? Every time. I'm like, dude, get those lats out, because they're tired, they're fatigued, and that could be one point place.
No, that's awesome. So have you ever also thought about, do you also do coaching alongside the posing, or you just solely focus on posing?
Just posing.
Have you thought about doing coaching?
No, not interested.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh gosh, no. I think that would be an absolute head F. I mean, I know myself what I'm impressed. I couldn't imagine bloody
dealing with others.
No, I will leave that up to the experts. Thank you very much. I don't think that I'm an expert in posing, although I know that I can give back to the industry, like you said. But I have never once had a feedback to say that my posing was crap. So I teach my girls the same way as I get taught, and how I feel, and when we work from there. So
that's good. That's good. So my next question is, what is 3 things that, bodybuilding has taught you?
Oh, okay. The number one thing is resilience. Because it is a subjective sport, you really do have to be resilient. You have to be strong-minded. That mental strength, that has definitely taught me mental strength. You can't be one of those people that, come second and go out backstage and throw your trophy away and, crack the shits. And then you've got people coming up to you going, oh, you should have won, bodybuilding competition wise is such a mental game that you really do have to have that strong. And it took me a little while to learn that, because you think of it as a competition against people, but it isn't. It's really a competition with people, with competitors, not against them. But it's up to those 7 or 8 judges to choose whether you are number 1 or number 2. But you can't walk away thinking that you're number 2. Or you can't come into a show thinking you're number 2 either. So that mental game, that mental strength, that resilience, that's like my number 1 that I've learnt through bodybuilding. Number 2 would have to be consistency. If you're not consistent, don't even bother. You might be one of those people that are just like, oh, I'm really tired today, I'm not going to bother. No. You've
not going to get anywhere.
Got to get up and you've got to do it. And thirdly, people bang on about, they ask you all the time, what motivates you? It's not motivation, it's habit. So you have to make habits to be a body. And that habit is, for me, is as soon as that alarm goes off in the morning, I'm up. I've got my shoes on, I've got my pants on, I've got my clothes on, and out the door. Without even thinking. I'm probably still yawning while I'm opening the front door, grabbing a coffee or whatever. But it's just, you just have to have that robotic kind of like, get it done,
that discipline.
absolute discipline, 100%. But yeah, no, not motivation. Motivation is shit, guys. Honestly, there's no. You have to have habit. You just have to have good habits.
Nah, I agree. I 100% agree. I think all three things are a really good foundation. I think they can take you a long way in sport. And I love that you can transition that to then all other areas of your life. And I think that's such a great thing about, bodybuilding. And a lot of people don't understand too, is that, you can build these really lifelong habits, like you're saying. And it's good to see because what you referenced, like the first thing to do with, the sport and that it is so subjective. And, we kind of get that mindset that we're competing like it's a race where,
Mm-hmm.
You can see a clear-cut winner and okay, you didn't win, where, you could both finish at the exact same time, but if someone liked the way you ran, then that person wins. And so remembering that competitive, that it's like that and how subjective it is very, very important.
I think so. I think a lot of people miss that
Yeah.
because they get very competitive with other people, and and that's where the kind of like the the talk happens, and the backstabbing and the
Mm.
business and this that. There shouldn't be such a thing in
Yeah.
bodybuilding, because really it's either a personal goal, a personal choice. Um, bodybuilding itself is very personal, I believe. You choose to do it. Your family doesn't choose you to do it. You do it. Um, your family pretty much goes through it with you.
Mm.
So it's incredibly selfish as well. So you do have a lot of negative traits in bodybuilding. But it would be really nice to go to a show and know that everyone is just supportive of everybody, regardless of wherever you place. And I've seen, especially in the masters division, I'll always plug the masters because I think that those women are just bloody incredible. And I think we get it
Yeah.
at our age. It's like, you know what, we're just celebrating because
Yeah.
we look damn hot in our
Yeah.
40s.
We've done it. We've done it. We've put in the effort, we haven't been lazy.
Absolutely, and I think you mentioned bikini at the start of this, and you know some bikini girls are probably going to kill me for saying this, but um, a prep for bikini is a lot easier than a prep for figure.
Yeah.
um, uh, I think also for figure though, when it comes to judging, I believe it's a lot easier for the judges than it is bikini.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's
It
that
goes hand in hand.
absolute flip side. Like, yeah, okay, you've got an easier prep girl, but damn, you got it hard with those judges,
Yeah,
right?
it's such an interesting thing. Like when you focus on like the men, it's so kind of clear cut, through all three categories. Most of the judging is, practically the same. Like there's only two little or three, including men's physique, like differences, but it's still, this is the broad term of what it is. But like you're saying, bikini, it is so hard to judge. It is like I'm still learning what it's all about. And like it is so confusing and crazy. But then, like you're saying, with figure, it's more of a clear cut understanding of what it is, but how much harder it is because of what you have to achieve in comparison. Because bikini, it's not always about that super conditioned look as well as the muscular size.
Exactly. And I think that, and because bikini is so big and wellness is so big, um, and the numbers are so great, you've got a smaller number of
Yeah.
winning, like that smaller chance. So it is incredibly competitive. A much harder job for the judges. So you really do have to take on board, you know what? They're the ones who chose it. It's okay.
Mm.
I came in the best I could. It's all right. And congratulate the winner, congratulate who came second, and walk away happy. If
Yeah.
you've given that prep 100%, you shouldn't walk away disappointed.
No.
You should be happy within yourself. Yes, it's disappointing if you don't win, and yeah, you kind of probably want to kill those judges. But at the end of the day, there always is another show.
Yeah. And it's the gratitude of going, I did it. Like I made it this far, I
Oh,
put the work in.
absolutely. Like I'm not discrediting bikini at all. Like I'm sure that those girls could
Yeah.
go their own stuff. For a figure girl, I know that the last weeks of prep, like now, for me, it's a massive mental game. It's you're tired, you're mentally tired, you're hungry, and and then you've got life,
Yeah.
all kids, husband, job,
Everything.
and everything
Got
else.
to balance it all.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Like you want to go to sleep, but then you can't sleep, and then you're up every 2 hours winging.
Yeah.
Right.
My last question now to kind of wrap things off, and I just thought it would be a really cool question, would be to whether it's any figure competitors, any, bodybuilders, anyone who's, starting to get into the gym, or just, general pop, like what is like any advice or word of wisdom that you want to give to these people that are listening?
Take your time. We said before, it's not a race.
Yeah.
Okay? Uh, Stop thinking that your first season you want to become a pro.
Mm.
I don't think I think it's great and all. Like people are just like, oh yeah, I want to become a pro this and a pro that. You actually, if you love competing, you want to stay in the amateur game as long as you possibly can, because there are shows, right? When you become a pro, you get cut off. I mean, I'm 7 years in the making. Yes, I think it's about damn time I go pro. I've waited long enough, but if I have to wait a little bit longer, that's fine. I'll deal with it. But I know the future of myself in the next few years when I go pro, and what I've set in front of me.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, not just for IFBB, but for a lot of other federations, they just want that instant gratification too soon.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, get some experience, go into shows and that, because some of these shows, some girls are only, or boys are only competing against two or three people.
Mm.
Me, that's not a competition. Put yourself out there, get out there, compete against the masses. Don't just compete against the ones and twos, because you don't really know where you stand in bodybuilding if that's what you're going to do, and then you want to go pro after having one season. Like, no, you just take your time.
I agree. It's like that. It's that experience, because at the end of the day, like, why it's a marathon or a sprint, because it doesn't take, sometimes it can take 15, 20 years for your body to actually start building that like top level class physique, getting that dense muscle, because that only comes with time. And the more you prep yourself, the better conditioning, the more your body gets used to it. And the biggest factor is, I think, a lot of people, like you're saying, chase that instant gratification, but also on the flip side of that, what they don't realize, and especially in the IFBB, you get a pro card, you do a pro show, all of a sudden you went from being at the top amateur to the bottom, and you may never go any further up. So then in some way, getting your pro card could be the end of your career in that type of sense of, achieving further.
And it has happened to many people in Australia that have got their IFBB pro, and they are now coaches and they're no longer competing, because the world of bodybuilding has progressed so quickly that they no longer are competitive. So once you become a pro, you are limited to spread. Well, now in Australia even more so. There are only pro shows for physique and bikini. There's no pro show for figure. There's a pro show for bodybuilding in Australia in the last few years anyway, and I don't think going to be in the future, to be honest. So when it comes to the future of bodybuilding in Australia, I do really want to, whoever's listening out there that is with the IFBB and is an amateur, go overseas.
Yeah.
Go across the pond, New Zealand, Singapore, Thailand, Japan. There are so many shows out there, guys, for NPC competitors, amateur competitors. Get your experience. Go out there. You don't have to be limited just for Australia.
Yeah.
And also for IMBA and ICN, there are shows overseas. Put a goal in place and do it. Don't just stay here in your own little sort of like
bubble.
Back in your own little bubble.
Yeah.
Get out there and experience bodybuilding for what it is. And if you just want to be one of those mums that just wants to get fit and compete, then that's all good. But if you want to go somewhere in bodybuilding, and I've always said you can never make a career out of bodybuilding because it costs too much money. But if you want to be up there with the elite, then you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah. No, I really like that. That's I think you couldn't have said that any better. That's a great advice. You really have to, even that, like you just saying that, like to be honest, I didn't know what you were gonna say, and that's kind of just been like a, what's the right word?
Revelation.
A confirmation in my head, a reminder. It's just like, because I haven't competed yet, and it's something that I want to do, but it's always that, enjoy it, don't rush it. It's not about that instant gratification, because like we're saying, at the end of the day, that flip of a coin, we get what we want, and then that's the end,
Mm-hmm.
and then because as much as it's different, I guess, if you love competing, and you don't mind, and you can be happy with, a slow progression in the pro world, but you won't have, I guess, if you're not genetically gifted in that sense, have as much fun as you would, as an amateur. So I think that is really good, and thank you for sharing that.
That's okay, and that's no worries at all. But everyone's ultimate goal is, either it's the Olympia, or it's it could be the natural Olympia for INBA. It could be a pro show for ICN Japan. Like, it could be like that's their pinnacle, right? But the majority of people that go pro and win pro shows is very minute.
Mm.
I don't think people realize how absolutely exclusive that is. It is not easy to win a pro show. And you said it before, you become pro, you are at the bottom of the barrel, my friend. You are right back
Starting all over again.
over again. There are only those really freaky people
Yeah.
that literally become pro and win pro shows, or come in top three, which happened last year at the Olympia in the figure division. She went pro that season at the Nationals, and then she did the Olympia, and then she comes third place. It's like, and that is just like a 1 in a trillion,
Yeah.
chance, opportunity that ever happened. That's just freak genetics. Just but yeah, look, small goals. We'll get there. Hopefully pro card this year, which would be great.
Yeah,
There is
fingers crossed. Very excited.
fingers crossed. I got to get into the overall first, so we'll see.
But like you said, at the end of the day, if it doesn't happen, coming this amateur Olympia, there's still time next year. I think, like you're saying, you've only just started training in the past year and a half, bodybuilding Pacific. It sounds like you've got a coach now that, you're on the same level, you're on the same goal, you know what needs to be done. So, we could be looking at, even if it does take an extra year, you're headed in that right direction. So it's really exciting to hear and see.
If my coach believes in me and says that I can do it, and then I think I can, and I want to do it also for the older ladies out there as well. I mean, I'm turning 46 this month, and I started bodybuilding in my late 30s, so I didn't always do this, and I started, obviously for a bloody weight loss challenge, for goodness sake. I was overweight. So, the older women, I think that they sort of, like, in their mid 40s, they think that they can't.
Too old.
But man, yes, you can.
Yeah. Never too old. Always, if you're young at heart, you can always do it.
The amount of 20-year-olds that I've won against is incredible. Like, it's not about the age, absolutely not. There is a little bit of genetics in there too, but I mean, I've fought genetics. I've trained my body to push the boundaries of my body to be able to grow the physique that I have, and into the position that I am, because I wasn't always looking like this, obviously. So it does take a lot of time, and it's taken 7 years of consistent training and building and eating to grow this.
Yeah, you've like you're saying, you've walked the walk, and it's great that you have that passion behind you, that you're wanting to lead from the front and show, like you're saying, the older demographic, going, hey, you can still do this. You can still get in the gym. You can still lose the weight. You can still, live the way you want to live, or create the body that you want to live. Don't let age restrict you.
Not at all. And I listen to a lot of podcasts over in the States, and they actually have figure master divisions over there specifically. They're actually going to do a figure masters Olympia next year.
Oh wow, that's exciting.
That's incredible. Yes, you hear it now.
No, that's really awesome.
It hasn't been exclusively announced yet, but there's a lot of talk about it. So I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. So those older women out there, there's a lot of opportunity out there for us to compete. So just don't give up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for chatting. It's been
Thank,
lovely. And good luck with the rest of your prep. I'm excited to see what happens.
thank you very much. 3.5 weeks, and I'll be on a jet plane.
Let's go. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Dale.